Welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages, with your host, Matthew Shipp. This is the podcast for all of those who are involved in the agriculture all the way to the distribution of beverages. And now your host, Matthew Shipp.
Hello and welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages. My name is Matthew Shipp. I'm your host, and today I'm here at Shortleaf Brewing in Winghaven in O'Fallon, Missouri. And I'm here with Michael Crowell, the owner, or co-founder, is it?
Correct.
Correct,
That's
co-founder.
correct.
How you doing today?
Great.
Great.
Beautiful day.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how Shortleaf came to be.
Yeah, so my brother Jonathan and I started this company in 2018 is when the LLC, oh, there goes my notes. The LLC started. We started in 2018, but really the company, I think, registered officially in 2019 as an LLC that we were hoping to open up a craft beer bar or a brewery or something like that. We weren't sure how that was going to go or what we were doing. We were totally just flying by the seat of our pants, guessing. Yeah, so we started in 2019 was the official year that we opened this place, but in 2018 is when we started like the business plan and like looking up places to potentially open, do all that fun stuff. So that's kind of how we started. But really, my hobby began about 11 or 12 years ago with brewing, home brewing mostly. I'm a teacher full time, so my summers usually, people always are like, oh, teachers have the summers off and you're so lucky, blah, blah, blah. But usually most teachers use that time to work another job to make money. So I usually revolve my hobbies around like things that can make me money. And one of the years as a hobby that I chose, because as a teacher, I chose a hobby every year to learn something new.
Okay.
One year I learned how to brew beer, and it was in tandem with working at St. Louis Wine and Beer Making, which is now Steampunk Brewworks, and they are a brewery now. But at the time when I worked there, it was a homebrew shop that sold the supplies to make your own beer, wine, and cider, and meads, and distilling. At the same time, they also provided educational coursework on how to like brew beer, how to make wine, etc. So I helped teaching those classes and stuff as a teacher full time. That's my career, is actually as a full time Spanish teacher. I'm really comfortable with doing that kind of stuff, so it was just a natural fit for me there. And I was pretty happy working with Dave at St. Louis Wine and Beer Making. But that was the thing that kind of started, and then it snowballed from there. Like I was never planning on opening a brewery, but I helped Dave construct his brewery. I actually helped him build out his brewery at Steampunk. That was sort of where the idea came to be. I was like, well, hell, I mean, this is fun, and I like Dave, and he's doing it, and why not me? You know.
How many years did you work with Dave?
I worked for Dave at Steampunk about 3 years, maybe.
Okay.
And then I stopped working for him because I was just too busy and worth teaching full time. And I worked also at Blumenhof Winery down in Detsau, and I just didn't have the time to work for him. And so I actually went back and helped him build out the brewery a year or two after I had worked for him. So that was not really connected to my employment there. It was just a separate thing. I told him, I was like, dude, I want to learn how to brew a beer on a commercial system. I'll help you build your brewery if you let me, or you teach me how to do it. So it was sort of a gentleman's agreement on that regard, but that's kind of how it came to fruition.
Wow. All right. That's a great story. What were some of the early challenges you ran into getting started, and how'd you overcome some of those?
Probably the initial challenge for us it wasn't writing the business plan. I had just finished my doctorate in 2016. So I was working on I'm a teacher, as I said, and my doctorate is in administration, but I had to I wrote a 187-page dissertation book, and I defended it, like the research and everything. It was no problem for me to write the business plan. I had already just done that basically with my dissertation. For me, that wasn't the big issue. Most people, that's the big issue, is I have to write a business plan. But for me, it was like easy. The biggest thing for us was financing and getting someone to believe in our project. We felt like nobody was willing to give us the time of day to listen to our idea. And we didn't have, all the capital one needs. Usually you have to have like 20%. So we had 10%. We were trying to find a bank that would be willing to finance this. We were actually featured in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch back then in 2018 because we were struggling to find financing, and we were trying to start a small business in Missouri, and nobody would give us the time of day. And we weren't the only ones that were struggling with financing at that time. So that was one of the things that I think, if I remember looking back, was like the hardest part about opening was just having money, getting the money and the resources to do it. and not having to bring on a bunch of partners. John and I wanted to do it kind of the two of us and not have a bunch of extra people involved, you know?
So how did Post Dispatch help you kind of overcome that challenge?
Well, they didn't really. I mean, outside of just advertising the fact that there are businesses out there trying to open and that if a bank is reading this, please reach out, you know? And so that's what happened. We had Carolyn Gegg, who worked for a bank that is now a different bank down in Arnold. She reached out to us. She found our number. I don't know how she found our number, honestly, but she reached out to us. I think she reached out to the Post Dispatch and they gave a contact to us or to her. And we were able to finance the project through that bank with only 10% down. So we had quite a few banks reach out to us after that article had been posted. So it was interesting that that's what it took. But like, it was not complaining. It was just like, why are we not able to find financing? Like, we have a good business plan. We worked with the incubator there off St. Peter's. It's a Missouri Extension office that does a Missouri small business, an SBA small business incubator that helps people find financing pending they do a good job of creating their business plan or doing market research or whatever. We approached them and said, what do you think of our business plan? They said, this is normally, and they were trying to pick it apart, but honestly, they were like, we usually have a lot of feedback, but they felt comfortable submitting it to banks first run. We didn't even have to have them do any edits because that's how they perceived it as being that good. We had no idea. We were ignorant. I wrote it, and John and I wrote it together with just my mindset was like, I'm writing a dissertation. It's got to be perfect, you know? And so like, maybe that helped us. It probably did.
Yeah.
But that was the weirdest thing is just not being able to get people believing in your project. That was the hardest part, I think.
So was it the ability to be able to tell your story, or which you hope kind of help identify maybe what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I would say that helped us tell the story at least. It gave us a chance to be heard. If I was to go back, I'd be like, I'm going to approach somebody and try to make it a news article or something so people know what's going on and what's happening and how can they be involved. That to me was the hardest part, was that people didn't know who we were. They didn't care. Banks didn't want to talk to us unless they saw dollar signs. They wanted to know how fast they were going to get their money back.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a matter of longevity. It was a matter of turnaround for them. I think that's changed since COVID. They've realized like, oh, we actually have to have a stake in this too. But this was pre-COVID, whenever everything was amazing, you know, and there was no shortages of anything, and labor was fine, and all that great stuff. So since then, there's been a variety of problems. But the initial issue you asked about was like, that was the biggest thing for us, was financing, and the second thing was finding a place. Like, where are we going to be?
How'd that go?
Well, Carolyn, with the bank that we worked with, wasn't okay with our initial spot. They were not willing to finance us. And they wanted 20% down, just like everybody else. And it's because we were renting. They envisioned our place to be like what we're sitting at. We're sitting at the patio of our building here in Winghaven, and it's got brick facade. There's nice siding. There's solar panels on the roof. It's got a nice interior that looks kind of English pub style. We found this building. It was a steal. And John and I were like, okay, we're not going to rent. We're going to buy, but we need more money. So we can't put 20% down. Can we put 10? And they were okay with that, pending the building is part of the collateral of the loan. So having our own building actually ended up helping us get financing versus, you know, renting. Whereas renting, you know, you hear people say, well, it's cheaper to open the business because you don't need all that money up front. But the downside is the bank is going to look at it and say, well, this is pure risk because there's nothing to fall back on. We don't have a building, for example. It's just equipment, or it's just inventory or whatever, and that's not good enough. The chairs are only worth so much money, but a building,
a lot
real
more
estate,
collateral on.
Yeah, has a longevity situation going on. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
I know that was a lot.
No, that was a lot. That's actually really helpful for somebody wanting to start a business. Yeah. Just knowing that, you know, get that business plan flawless as you can, and it may help to get your story out there to help convince banks that, oh, you have something here. This is not somebody else looking to take a chance on.
Yeah.
So what would you say now that how long have you been in business?
We're at 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Yep.
So in the last, and you've built this over 4.5 years. What do you think, what's your current wide open biggest challenge right now you're having?
Oh, biggest challenge right now, I would have to say labor. And I would say that that's not going to go away. Labor is always like that thing that is going to keep you questioning. Do you trust the people that are in your building to manage your day-to-day operations? Do you trust the people to, produce the product that you're pushing out there in a consistent manner? Are they going to show up? Are they going to show up and not leave in the middle of the shift? I mean, since COVID, labor, I would say, especially the back of the house in restaurants, has been like the impossible thing to manage. It's not a simple matter of saying we're going to pay you more. It's not that easy anymore. I mean, we're paying a lot. I mean, people talk about people talk about living wages. We're paying living wages for our kitchen staff easily. And we still get people walking out the door middle shift. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is anymore. And I would say that that's the most challenging part now. After being open 4.5 years, labor in the kitchen's always been a problem. We're paying more now, so it's less of a problem. It's still a question mark. We had somebody last night not show up, and we were paying them $20 an hour. So it's like, how do you compensate people fairly in a way that inspires them to keep coming back, create an environment that inspires them to come back, and somehow create some sort of loyalty that they're not willing to screw you over, Yeah. It's really challenging. That is the most challenging thing right now.
All right.
Truly.
Reminds me of a couple clients I worked with, and we facilitated a group with the team, and a big portion of it was buy-in. Yeah. So, but yeah, we can talk about that later. But yeah, buy-in, definitely buy-in is a big one.
Yeah, buy-in's a big one. But like, how do you create buy-in for somebody that's just like, hey, I want to work in your kitchen, and like, it's not my career choice. It's like, this is temporary.
Yeah.
It's like I can make buy-in happen in the brewery because you got people that are passionate about it. Victoria is our head brewer here in Winghaven, Isaac's at our lake location, and there's not necessarily buy-in from them because that's their career choice, that's their path. It's like for me as a Spanish teacher, they don't have to create buy-in for me. I already know I love Spanish. I already know that that's my calling, and that's what I love, and that's what I chose to do. But like, and not to say there isn't people out there that chose back of the house kitchen management or like production on that side. I'm not saying that there isn't people that are passionate about that, but in general, what I've found is the people that are applying for the job aren't necessarily those people. First of all, how do you find those people? And secondly, like, what do you do to keep them to stay? Because historically, we've had secondary students. I'm a high school teacher historically, and they'll come and work in the kitchen for a part-time job. And I get that they're not there for the longevity. Yeah. I am not talking about those individuals. I'm talking about people that are like, you're a career person. You're working in the kitchen, and that's your quote unquote calling. How do we inspire them to stay? That's been a struggle for us since COVID.
Okay. Speaking of like team, and you said it's a little bit easier at the brewery level. How important has communication between your team been contributed to the success of Shortleaf?
Communication? Mm-hmm. That kind of it falls in line with buy-in, I think. You got to really make sure people are heard. You got to, and not just make sure they're heard, but actually hear them and do your due diligence to make sure that you follow up with, okay, this was a concern that you voiced. Here's what we've done to address it. Here's the solutions we've come up with. And there are shortcomings, and admitting that you're not going to always be finding solutions to problems. Like, it may be that just this is how it is. We're not going to make wings differently because this is how we make them. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes that's the complaint is like, I don't like doing it this way. Like, we had this guy when we first started. He didn't like making the smash burgers the way we made them. He wanted to make them like super thin and like crispy. And we're like, that's okay. That may be what you think in your mind as the perfect smash burger. But here, our place makes them this way. And our burger is very popular. It's the most popular item. We sell more burgers than anything. All the other menu items combined still don't outsell the burger how we make it.
Okay, now I'm going to have to try a burger.
You have to. But the thing is it didn't matter how many times I explained it to this person. They still made it the way that they wanted to. And so it's a training issue, right? It's a persona issue that involves training people properly from day one and not letting you want to have the ability to give people input and to feel like they've been empowered and have buy-in. But at the same time, we're a small company. We're not McDonald's. We're not Burger King. This place is owned by John. We walk in the door. The place exists because of us. The whole place was cleaned thoroughly before we opened because of John and I. The whole entire dish pit was rotted out. I had to reconstruct it completely myself. I'd never done that before. So every time someone's back there washing dishes and they're not making a good job of it, or they're not doing a thorough job or making a mess of it, like, to me, I'm actually personally offended because I'm like, hey, I actually built this. I didn't hire somebody to do that. It was all me. And I gotta remove myself from that idea that they don't know that. That was 5 years ago. and then I also got to convince them that this is how we do it, and your opinion matters, and I want to change things. If you think, because you're my employee, that this makes sense, I want to reflect on that and not be stubborn about it, and actually make change based on my employees. And it may ebb and flow. I've been teaching for 15 years. There's no way. If I taught the same way I taught when I first started, I wouldn't be teaching anymore. There's just no way. So it's important for us as a business to be like flexible, understanding our clients, our customers that walk in the door, but also our employees that walk through the back door. Like, they're important to us, and we care about their opinions. We care about what value they bring to the table. But they also have to understand that we bring value too as a business that's been going for 4.5 years.
Yeah,
and I think that's pretty good.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, definitely. Finally, on this bit of questioning, what advice would you have for a new potential upcoming, I want to start my own brewery business owner?
Advice for a new business brewery owner: minimal. Be minimal. Be minimal. Okay. Don't overthink things. People ask us we spent the first year and a half. We have so many bad reviews from our first year and a half, 2 years, because people did not understand our business model. They didn't understand that you order at the bar and that there's no servers.
So they would just sit down?
They'd sit down. They would get ignored in their minds. No one's approaching them. And then they'd leave. And they were inspired by that negative experience to leave a negative review, even though we would reply, hey, I'm sorry that you had this experience, but by the way, we don't have servers. We don't have that. And like, it always shocks me when we get that. We don't get those anymore, really.
I saw the sign as soon as I walked in.
Yeah, there's signs.
Nice and bright.
We've done a very good job. I'll give anybody that gave us a negative review the first year. We did not have signage necessarily that was like posted. We had it on the menus though. Every single menu had order at the bar. Like, it was pretty obvious.
I saw it as an option.
Yeah, it wasn't like questionable. It was there, but like, I get it how some people could be confused, because this place was an Irish pub for like 12, 13, 14 years, whatever. And they had servers. So I get how somebody could be confused. Like, when we first opened, people were coming in, they're like, can I get a Guinness? No. Can you get a Mick Ultra? No, we're a brewery. We offer craft beer. Initially, when we opened first, we were a brew pub. So we had 12 beers that were guest taps, and we had 12 of our own. And then COVID hit, we were able to take over the rest. But like, we had to tell people, like, no, we don't have those options, because we're a craft brewery and we offer craft beer as an option that's not ours, in case you find like you like sours. We don't make sours. We have a sour on tap. It took a lot of convincing on our end to get people to drink craft beer. We've converted a ton of people out here in Winghaven because of that fact. Like, we just have. But we got a lot of negative feedback initially because people just didn't understand the business model. They didn't understand what craft beer was. We had to convince them.
You need to be very persistent.
So for a new business owner or a new brewery owner, like, I don't know if that's really a problem anymore necessarily.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, depending on where you go. Your story is not the only one where people have had to convince people, especially in the craft, because you're trying something new.
Right.
And it is yours. It's uniquely yours.
Right.
And we're actually going to get into how uniquely yours it is here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less and less. I mean, we opened not that long ago, 2019, but even then it was like out here in O'Fallon, Missouri, in Winghaven, where this was like I said, an Irish pub for a long time. It took a lot of convincing. And on top of that, like I said, if you're going to do the limited business model like we are with no servers, make sure you have signage, make sure you shout it from the mountaintops. One of the things we tell our bar staff is like, greet every single person that walks through the door, because the only person that they're going to meet is you behind the bar, and you're not leaving behind the bar, because if you do, no one is out here to quote unquote serve people. So you got to make sure you're vocal. You got to make sure you're nice and friendly, and make sure you invite people up to the bar to talk to you, because that's the only way they're going to get a drink.
Okay. I think you started in on this, but is there anything else that really makes Shortleaf uniquely yours?
I mean, I don't know. Like, you know, there's breweries in St. Louis that have specializations. Like, everyone knows that Narrow Gauge makes really great IPAs. You know, everyone knows that Side Project makes really awesome sours and saisons, Belgian style saisons, and bottle aged, barrel aged stouts and stuff. We don't necessarily have a niche market per se out here. I would say that we focus more on multi styles. Like, we're a multi brewery. Like, you can find a stout year round here. You can find a porter year round here. You can find a brown ale or red ale year round here on tap. There are breweries that you go and you will not find that in the summer. You're not going to find a dark beer. You're not going to find malty style. So we're more on the malty side. We're not on the hoppy side. We have those.
Yeah.
We have 24 beers on tap that we make all year round, but we keep them consistent. Like our Mexicale is a Goza style beer with key lime and sea salt. It will be on tap year round, even though it's more popular in the summer. In the wintertime, we know that's not going to be as popular, but that's the nature of the beast. We don't care.
All right. We are chasing flies out here, so
we're on the patio.
We're on the patio. It's been an interesting fencing with my pencil against flies and whatnot. Now I'm going to take me through the kind of the journey of your beverages, your from the harvest to pour. It's kind of what this is. So take me from like where you're sourcing to, again, kind of how you decide what to make and how to make it uniquely yours. Why is your Pilsner is different from somebody else's Pilsner, to your staff and how they present your product.
So, I mean, we're in the Midwest, so we're really close to like grain options. Colorado's a main source of a lot of the grain that we use. It's not because we purposely choose to work with the Colorado maltsters or anything like that. It's just because of proximity. Mm-hmm. And I think that proximity creates a situation where the grain is cheaper. So we go that route because we're looking out for our bottom dollar, but also for the consumers, because we're trying not to raise prices, even though everybody is. We might be the cheapest brewery out in St. Charles County in terms of the per pint amount for now. But it's just because like we're trying to make sure that we keep a really close eye on our costs to ensure that we're getting the best amount to the consumer, but we're also getting our bottom dollar as well. With relation to grain, when we first started, I planted 10 acres of barley myself at our family farm in Texas. It was a gamble. Yeah, it was cool. It was a varietal called Calypso, and I got it from I don't know what they're called, like a seed bank out in Colorado. And they shipped it to me, and I planted it at our family farm in northern Texas. And I was told by Texas A&M and a couple other universities down in Texas whenever I reached out about whether or not grain would grow there. They actually are one of the fastest growing areas in the country for barley. They used to be the one of the number one, not number one, but like up there. And it went away for other reasons, but it's been coming back. Apparently, Texas is like, oh, we're going to be growing barley again. Same with grapes. I planted 10 acres. We ended up getting about 9,000 pounds of grain, which was pretty good. I mean, the amount I was expecting was a lot higher, but I think that there was a lot of they had a lot of waste when you harvest any kind of grain, in this case barley. You get a lot of grasshoppers, you get a lot of other kinds of plants that you weren't expecting. So you have to weed it out. You have to kind of clean it. As
volunteers.
Yeah. Our initial farmhouse ale was brewed entirely with our own barley that I had planted and malted at Tex Malt in Houston. In Dallas, Fort Worth.
So your first year, you said?
Yeah. Okay. When we first opened, we had, like I said, we had a full trailer full of grain that I had planted and malted at our family farm.
Truly homemade.
Yeah. It was really cool, and I wanted to keep doing it, but our uncle, who is one of the siblings that my mother and her siblings all own the farm now. My grandparents passed away. We just didn't see eye to eye on how we should continue that relationship, so we're not doing it anymore. But like when we initially started, the plan was like, let's keep doing this.
Kind of cool idea, though.
Keep it as family as possible. But since then, like I said, we've been kind of getting our stuff from Colorado. Our hops we mostly get from the West Coast. A lot of Cascade, a lot of Warrior. So a lot of it's coming from the West Coast, but we also get some from the northern part of the U.S., Wisconsin, and stuff like that. We try to keep the grain and the hops U.S., and then most of the yeast strains are coming from U.S. companies as well. We've used Omega, we've used Lallemand, we've used Omega out of Nashville, or sorry, not Omega, Bootlegger out of Nashville, and so we try to make it domestic at least. But we do use some European strains. We use some European hops, some grain from Europe. Some of my brewers are particular about if they're making a German-style Pilsner, they want to have German malt, they want to have a German hops. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, ultimately, like, no one can taste really the difference, but they argue against that, so I'm like, okay. So we have some differences there, but in general, we keep it domestic. So, and then from the perspective of the glass, like, I'm drinking our German Pilsner, you're drinking the stout with a coffee that we got from a local coffee shop, Upshot over there in Cottleville.
Yep.
And so like we try to collaborate with local people, but we don't shout it from the mountaintops. We just kind of do our thing. We try to bring in as many people as we can that are friendly with us, and we're trying to stay local here in O'Fallon. So when we're doing events, we stay local with O'Fallon residents. We try to talk about Winghaven and keep our citizens happy. All around us, we're in the middle of 3,000 homes. So all of our patrons are pretty much people that can walk here,
That's cool.
which is really neat. I wish I had a brewery in my backyard. But yeah.
So how do the collabs affect your process? I mean, do you learn from that?
You mean collabs are like Upshot?
Like Upshot with the stout, the coffee stout you have, or I mean, another I'm sure you've done another collaboration. So
yeah. So
what do you take from those?
Well, yeah. Usually it's like you're hanging out and just drinking,
Mhm.
you're just chit chatting, right? And you have an idea, and the other person's like, "Well, you could do this," and so you start bouncing ideas off each other, and based on that person's prior knowledge and what they know about brewing, in this case coffee, like I know a little bit about coffee and I know how it relates to the brewing process when it comes to beer and how astringency can be pulled if you like have too high of a heat, or if like you got too much dark malt or something like that. Like I get the concept, but like from somebody who's a pro that makes coffee all the time, like it's gonna help me understand like why would you pick that coffee versus this one. So it definitely helps one understand more depth on the ingredients side, like what you should add, what you should not add, what you should look for when it comes to ingredients you want to add or whatever. So like I appreciate that person's perspective on it. Usually it's just because we're drinking and just trying to be creative, just having fun with it.
So you still brew, or I know you have a...
Yeah, so actually the Lake location, I've been the brewer for the last year and a half, even though I'm a full-time Spanish teacher. I go down every single weekend and I brew, or I package with my brother or something like that. So my brother Matthew and my brother Jonathan have done a good job of helping with that regard. But in general, it's been me that's kind of taken the reins on that. And it's my own fault. This place exists because I took up the hobby of brewing and I got into it really heavily. And so like, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that that's the reason why I'm the one that has to do it. And I always find myself kind of thinking bitterly about it. Like, oh, I have to do this. But then I'm like, no, I get to do it. Like it's something that lots of people would be like, man, I wish I had a brewery, So it's kind of like cool that it is something I get to do and not something I have to do, really.
All right, we're gonna move right to the pour. We're almost done with our journey here.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that your customers enjoy what they're drinking? B, your staff really help promote your beverage?
In terms of like the patrons, like we have almost 300 members in our pint club, and they'll tell us if something's not right. First of all, so
that's a great tip. You have a pint club, have somebody comes in, and
they'll be like, this doesn't taste right, and it doesn't require. They don't have to do that. They don't ever get that. I mean, it's very rare that has occurred. I would say that I can count on one hand how many times I've had a patron that was a pint club member be like, and these people are not like once in a while people. They're here all the time. That's why they're in the pint club, so they know our products. So that first and foremost is important. Like, yes, as you just said, like consider having a regular rewards program or something like that. Like reward people for coming in, and it could be anything. It could be a punch card. It could be whatever. But in this case, I mean, we'll have people. They'll be honest with us and say, hey, this doesn't taste right. So then you say, okay, let me try it. And you taste it, you're like, yeah, you're right. It's a little off. So then, okay, we'll go back to the drawing board with that beer. It's very rare. It doesn't happen very often because usually if it's off to the patron, we know it first and we don't try to even do that because we're not that place. We always are. If we're not happy with what we're putting on, we don't put it on, period. I know there's places that do. They'll still put it on and they'll call it something else. That's not me. That's not our place. We respect the patron. We want people to have the consistent experience. I would argue that most places would want that. There are some breweries that exist that are like, oh yeah, we're not going to have the same beer twice. And that's the thing.
Okay.
It's not us. We try to have consistency, but we also have some experimentals too. If a patron doesn't like what they're drinking, we give them something else. If they're not a regular and they come in and they say, I don't like this, and they have a whole glass and they drink half of it, like, all right, what would you rather have? Like, can I get you something else? Because to us, it's like, it is a waste in our eyes. It's like, damn, I wish that could be something that they would just finish. But it's not about that. For us, it's like an experience. This is a premium product. We want people to feel happy and satisfied whenever they're doing it. When they're here, when they're tasting, we want them to be happy.
Yeah.
Period. So that's our MO. We kind of flow that boat.
Hello, all. Matt here. We're just going to take a real quick pause in this interview because Michael wanted to let you know that if you take a screenshot of this podcast right now at this time point and show it to the bartender, you'll get a free 16-ounce taste of one of his beers. He's doing this because he really appreciates his customers and wanted to offer you guys something fun for listening. All right, the offer is only good, though, till October 2023. So if it is past Halloween on 2023, sorry, but maybe you can talk to him. Who knows? Anyway, let's get back to the rest of the show. I hope you're enjoying it so far.
How do we make sure the staff do it? Well, we have some pretty experienced staff. A lot of our staff, they've been here quite a long time. Todd just walked behind you, and he's one of our staff that's been here a long time. Brittany, our GM, she was our first hire. We have people that have been here for 2 or 3 years, and they are a part of our team. They know our story. They know the evolution of our company, and they know how we've progressed. Todd is in other businesses, clubs. I mean, he is a part of the brewing community in terms of consumption, and he'll tell us if something's not good enough. And as a person behind our bar, it's good that he knows about product and he can help educate our staff about what's positive, what's negative about certain things, or how is this beer supposed to be poured, or that nitro beer. Yes, it's supposed to be a different temperature, but like you don't have that option, so like have it sit for a second before you give it to somebody.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah. So it just depends. I would say that's our weakest area. Staff training on like beer styles, asking people to learn more. That's something we're working on. And it's something that I haven't been able to really focus on as a person who's an educator and loves training. That's something that I would do. I would love to improve and enhance, but I have not personally had the time because, again, it's my full-time hobby. And up until this year, we've not really had the organizational structure in place to allow both Jonathan and I to focus energy on making the business just better. It's more about just making sure it exists and runs and is open every day, So that's kind of how it's been. But this year's, I think that we're seeing a change, and moving forward to this next year, it's going to be quite interesting.
Oh, I look forward to seeing how it grows. So speaking of that, where do you see yourself taking Shortleaf next?
We've been toying around with doing just different. John and I both been spitballing around the idea of doing different types of businesses. We don't necessarily like the idea of being solely in the brew pub business. We've talked about opening up a speakeasy, talked about opening up a third location for Shortleaf in South County. We've talked about opening up another location right here in St. Charles County, maybe just on the other end of the county. We've talked about, we have a friend who's considering opening up a franchise in Florida. There's just been a variety of conversation because the business works. And it's amazing how many people come in here and ask us what they can do to be involved. They want to be involved. And what does that look like? What does that mean? I don't know. When people ask me that, like, how can we be involved or what can I do? Or you guys ever thought about expanding? And to me, I'm always like, yeah, but I don't know if it's involving you, so to me, I'm always just like, well, is that a possibility? Maybe. And, that to me is a good sign.
Yeah.
It's not just one person consistently. It's like a variety of people that ask that question. So it's like, okay, something must be going well because people are perceiving this as way more organized and well-oiled machine than I perceive it actually to be. I'm on the back end and I see all the mess that it is. But like from the perspective of a consumer or somebody that's in here often, things are going just fine. Yeah. That's a refreshing thought. So to where we're heading, it's hard to say. Our Lake location has a different partnership structure. So this location is my brother and I only, Jonathan and I. And then the Lake location is my other brother, Matt, Jonathan, and then my brother-in-law, Robert. And so that location has 4 partners. It's a little bit more complex. And we're seeing how that is a positive and also a negative when it comes to running the business and the back end of things. So it's interesting to see how more people add complexity, but it can be looked at as positive and also negative. It just depends on how you look at it.
So people definitely see the potential here. That's great. So you've really, and the people you have here, they've had your beginning, you're building your culture around them. So you definitely have and the people who regulars are asking how they can help more. So they're definitely are seeing your potential.
Yeah.
That is excellent. How does having 4 different co-owners complicate things?
Well, the lake location, it's different personalities. I mean, that's like the easiest cop-out answer to that question. I mean, so there's different people, obviously, right? So, but I would say the personalities are definitely what make or break that situation. Thankfully, we're all related. I mean, either by blood or by marriage. So that helps because we can't not get along because we have to because we're related. You know, like
you're gonna see each other for dinner or a picnic every once in a while.
Yeah, we're gonna have a family event, and it's like it's either gonna go positive or negative. Like, so I think we all do a pretty good job of kind of isolating the business from our family life and personal lives. Like we talk about it a lot, I think, and we've tried to do a better job of kind of separating that out. And I would say that's been the hardest part is deciding. And same with my professional life as a teacher. It's like, am I going to bring this home or not? And do I want to bring this home to my significant other? Do I want to make this part of my everyday life all day, every day, 24/7? No, I try to, and I've tried to. This is a newer evolution of my persona and how I approach the business. Is like kind of like school. I leave at 3:30 or whatever from my job. I don't think about it anymore. And the problem is that outside of that, I have to think about this place. And so how do I find the balance of this place in my personal life as well? It's really challenging because, as I said, this is a full-time hobby. This isn't like I can just come in and casually do it willy-nilly and it'll just happen. If I had bought a franchise, maybe, because it exists. But this place doesn't exist in anybody else's mind except for my brothers and I.
Do you still see it as a hobby?
I don't see it. I've never thought it was a hobby. I just say it as a joke.
Okay. I was just like, I wanted to make sure.
It's a full-time hobby. I say that as a joke because it's not a full-time. Everybody knows. Everybody recognizes that I say that too. They're like, so which is the hobby? Your career or your business? You know, I'm like, they're neither. They're both jobs. And this job, unfortunately, doesn't pay anything. You know, like this job here, my brother and I, John, we don't make any money on this other than equity. You know, we make equity in the building because we own it. And the business is doing better every year annually, but like we don't take a paycheck. You know, we don't take anything. And I would say that would define our success as well compared to other businesses that try it, because I know lots of brewery owners that are the brewery owners and that's their job and they're taking a paycheck and it has to work. It has to for their livelihood. Whereas John and I, and the lake location's the same way, we all have full-time jobs. We have careers. We're not relying on this place to pay our bills, but at the same time, the place is relying on us to make sure it works right and functions. So the positive side of the partnership at the lake, for example, is that, you know, I have a degree in administration. Basically, it's business administration, even though it's education. I mean, you take all the same classes almost. Jonathan has a degree he specializes in internet security and technology security. And my brother Matthew's a lawyer, so legal side and the logistics of all that jargon that nobody understands, he can interpret. And then my brother-in-law specializes in corporate finance, and so like there's a lot of positives that are brought to the table in terms of like insight as to how this could work well. John and I have done a great job at this location just guessing, but the other location has a lot more insight into the inner workings of like the government. For example, Matt is a lawyer and he can read the law and interpret it properly or decide how we should approach a law based on his interpretation of that law and how he would see it in court. So like that's really good insight and valuable information that we would normally have to pay for. And thankfully he's doing it as he's got a career, and then on top of that, as his hobby, he's helping us with that. So that's why I call it a hobby, because we're not doing this, and at the lake we're not getting paid either. So every weekend I go down there and brew. It's on my own time. I'm doing it for fun. To hopefully the business makes money and works, and then maybe it expands, you know. But like ultimately, it's like
pulling on the talents and skills of your team to really make this continue to grow. All right.
Money helps too.
Oh well, yeah. I'm sure that you'll get there.
Money helps too.
Finally, last couple questions. This is the hardest one. What is your favorite beverage
that I make?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it changes, but usually it's the Americale, whatever the lightest thing is on tap.
Lightest thing, okay.
Yeah.
What was it called again?
Americale.
Americale, okay.
Yeah. It's a pseudo lager, so it's not actually a lager. It's we use a Kvike yeast strain from Norway that ferments at like 95, 100 degrees.
Kvike strain?
Kvike. Yeah.
What is that?
It's called Oslo. We actually get that one from Bootlegger down in Nashville. But it's really super clean, crisp, fast fermenting. It ferments in 3 days. We can brew and package it within 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a great beer. It's light to drink. It's got good flavor. Not a lot going on, but that's the point. When I said people come in here asking for Ultra, I'm like, all right, I need to make something for these people. Meet them where they're at. And that's one of the things that we try to do is we try to okay, if you don't like beer, what do you like? Cider? Okay, we got a custom blend of apple juice from Happy Apples down in Marthasville, local orchard. They've got over 200,000 trees. All right, we're going to get some apple juice. We'll make a cider. Okay, you don't like that either. Okay, we'll make a seltzer. Yeah, the seltzer's been hot, right?
Seltzer's been really popular lately, yeah.
It's kind of going downhill, but it's still popular. And ours is really good. And we make it 7.2%. It's the highest one. It was before Bud Light came out with their premium, whatever it's called, seltzer, which is like 8%. We did it first. Everybody was doing 5% or something. I was like, I'm going to make it 7. If you're going to drink a seltzer, go all out,
Yeah.
And so ours is like really clean. It's clean, but it's not plain. It's not water with alcohol. It's got nice flavor to it. It's got like a nice, really subtle Sauvignon Blanc or like really slight cider characteristic going on. And people drink it plain, or they'll put a little lime in it. And that's it. We don't put any artificial flavoring or anything like that into it. And the way we do it here at the tap room, and we sell it to Frankie Martin's over there in Cottleville, it's on tap there too. And the way that we do it and the way they do it is like, if you want flavor, you can have it. We have like pumps, and you can pick the one you want. We pump it into the glass and pour the seltzer onto it.
That's awesome.
But lots of people they're drinking it because they're saying they're trying to be gluten free, or they're trying to be healthy, or whatever the reason. But when they're drinking a neutral or a whatever the other ones are called, I can't even think of the names of them. Any of them. Sonic has one now. It's got a bunch of artificial flavorings and sweeteners in there. So you're trading off beer. Okay, maybe you can't have gluten, but let's say you can, and you're just drinking it to be healthy. I know what's in beer. It's water, yeast, hops, and barley, and that's it. Get Reinheitsgebot, the Germans. Those are the 4 ingredients. Now, some people add more stuff into them, like your coffee stout. I like that what it's doing there. Yeah,
got some drunk flies.
Yeah, we got some flies in there. It's helping us out. But that's what you find in beer. But with those seltzers you buy at the store in those cans, what's in them? They have to have a nutritional value on them. Like that's not good. So ours is like sugar water fermented. There's nothing in it.
Awesome.
Plain.
I like it.
And we also have a full bar. We have 80 plus bourbons to choose from. Like if you're like not a beer drinker, or if today's not your day, maybe you want a bourbon, you got it. We're trying to quench all thirst.
Quench all thirst. There you go. There's your new slogan.
That's right.
Our mission is to quench all thirsts.
Exactly.
All right. You want to? Do you have any guys have any events, or you have any kind of seasonal events, or do you guys do tours or anything like that?
We partner with the library across the street. It's the Winghaven Express Library. They have an event about every other month that basically is me talking about our story, what we do, who we are, and then we walk across the street. And it's hard to do a tour of our brewery because it is small. Like you can see it from the bar. It's a 20 by 50 square foot space. It's not big, but it's different being inside and like looking at it and talking about it. So we do the presentation over at the library, then we walk across the street and we do a tasting in the brewery. And that happens once every other month, and you can find that on the St. Charles County Library like catalog of events. And so we try to do that pretty consistently just to kind of keep the library involved. And the library actually involves themselves anytime we do a street party or something, they'll set up a little mobile library. But we have in October, we have coming up our Oktoberfest, which is the second weekend of October. It's October 7th. And we shut the street down. We have live music. We have like a Stein holding contest. We have we'll do pints for sale out in the street. We'll have our Oktoberfest style tables set up. It's a lot of fun. We have a pretty good turnout every year. Last year was our first trunk or treat. We do at the very end of October. There was at least 3,000 people here last year.
Wow.
Kids, and we had a bunch of businesses set up their trunks, and everybody ran out of candy, and they had to go get more. I mean, there was so many people here. It was ridiculous. We do that every year at the end of October. We also have a wort share that we do in the spring, which is our Winghaven wort share, which is where we basically will brew the beer. We don't actually put the hops. We don't boil it or anything like that. We do the mash, and we get the wort for the people that want to participate. We give them 6 gallons, and then we say, bring your bring your wort that you make into beer back in like 6 weeks, and we're going to have a street party where everybody can try your rendition of the one recipe that we created. And we get 50 different beers from one recipe. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
Normally we do that in the spring, in which we will have another one in the spring next year. And we actually just brewed the winner this year. This last weekend, we just brewed the
so you did brew the winners. Okay.
But we're going to do another one this fall. So we're going to do the wort share near the end of September, early October, and then they'll come back that first week in November, and we'll have our street party then. So it'll be kind of like a winter style. So hopefully there'll be like browns, stouts, porters, stuff like that. And so we'll have a Winghaven wort share in the fall to kind of celebrate how people take one recipe and change it in 50 different ways.
For our listener that doesn't know what a wort is, you want to explain briefly?
Wort's like when you're making coffee, right? And you take your coffee grounds and throw it in there, and you got your filter, and you pour water on it, and then you're left with a liquid, right? Your coffee. You could do more with that if you want to, or you could just drink it. In this case, we're kind of doing the same thing, but the liquid's sugary. And so what happens next is usually what brewers will do is they'll take it and they'll boil it for an hour, and they'll add hops, like making soup kind of. And then they'll take that and throw it into a fermenter and add yeast, and that yeast eats the sugar and it produces CO2 and alcohol. So that's kind of the process of brewing in a really, really like 30-second like snippet.
That's great.
But basically, home brewers have to usually do the whole process themselves. But what we do is we take the half of the steps out, and they get to come and be creative with the last end. Like they can put hops in, they can put candy, they can put marshmallow, they can put a different yeast strain if they want to. They do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. And then you as a consumer can be like, I want to participate in that. I'd love to taste all those and vote for the best one. And then the winner that gets the most votes gets to come here and brew on our system. We package it. We put it in cans. We put their custom label on it. So I've got the last 3 years, and the one we just won this year is a sour. It's like a peach cobbler, but it's a sour.
Okay.
And they already have the labels. We'll can it. They have their picture on the side of it. We put it on tap, and we have a release party for them every year. It's not my recipe. It's their recipe. I have the base, but they did whatever they wanted to. It's their beer. And we do that every year annually at the end of April. But then we also are going to do it again this fall. So that's something that is going to be pretty cool that we have only done annually once a year, but we're going to do it twice a year now.
That sounds awesome.
That's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. All right. And you said you have your 3 locations here in Winghaven, O'Fallon. And what was the other location again?
The other location is Shortleaf Brewing, Loto, L-O-T-O, and that's in Camdenton, Missouri, which is near the Lake of the Ozarks.
All right. Well, Michael, thanks a bunch for your time. This was really informative. I think you left a lot of notes on the table for anybody looking to start up. Things to give them a lot to think about. Again, thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages with Matthew Shep. Check the show notes for our guest contact information. And connect with Matthew Shep on LinkedIn today.